I was asked to talk a little bit about ArcGIS Online and how I'm using it in extension programs in IRIS. And so that's what I'm going to cover is the extension part of our program here. And ArcGIS Online was introduced a few years ago, and when it was first introduced, I was looking at it and didn't really get too excited about it because of the fact that it looked like another mapping program similar to Google Earth, and I didn't see how we were going to incorporate it into what we were currently doing in extension and outreach efforts and in some of our applied research. However, when I saw this template and how it was used, it did get me excited. This is an example of one of their templates that are available in ArcGIS Online. And ArcGIS Online allows us to put data up into our own space on the Estuary cloud. And from there, we can then take that data and present it using various templates that are readily available. We can also, of course, modify the templates, write our own code to have them act in different ways. And this template allowed me to present some data that from one of our inventories. And some of the work that we do in IRIS, we do resource inventory and analysis work. And one of our projects has been mapping the submerged aquatic vegetation in the Hudson over 3 separate mappings separated by about 5 years each. And the problem that always comes up is how do you show this information to people? How do you present multiple years easily? And this template solves that issue. What I'm doing, this is now live online. And this template allows us to show 3 different years for this data set. And we can zoom into this area. And as we zoom in, the data set starts to become visible. And it's readily easy for educators to start talking about the change over time of these submerged aquatic vegetation and the invasive of water chestnut in the area and how they intermix and things like that. And this template sort of got me excited to say, well, there's a lot more here than just a simple mapping program similar to Google Earth, where we can just navigate and see some, turn on some layers and off some layers, that type of thing. Here we can actually control the layers that we're putting in more easily. We can take information that we have currently available. And this data, why I started with this data is because this is actually on the New York State Clearinghouse. And we have that data up there as well. You can download it, and if you have a GIS, such as ArcGIS or ArcMap and things like that, then you can bring it in and use it. But if you don't have access to that, it's not available to you. However, putting the data in a template like this allows us to distribute it to everyone. We can make the URL public. People can search for it. As a matter of fact, they can search for this on the Estuary site, and it pops information up and they can readily use it. So that fed right into the whole idea of extension, outreach, getting this data out. So we started looking at how to use this and how could we apply this to more of our extension activities, not just to some of the applied research where we had nice data sets, but how could we help other people in the extension organization to get their information out that had some sort of spatial component to it. Let me just collapse this back down. And so Neil Curry, who's a GIS extension educator in Dutchess County, had the idea of using ArcGIS Online to try and get some data out to his towns and county volunteers. He's been working on that for a number of years. We've discussed things and looked at things like PDFs and things like that in trying to get this information out and educate them as to what they could do, what they couldn't do, what sort of environment they're living in, what kind of watershed they're living in, how their watershed and their activities impact others and all that type of thing. And so we applied and received a Smith-Lever grant to do exactly that. And we expanded it beyond just the Dutchess County to include all of New York State, working through what is called the program work teams for extension, which are loosely formed groups around different focuses such as water management, forestry, community development, that type of thing. So in the very beginning, we were hit with the same issue of how do we make this appropriate, or how do we entice people into using this interface. It's quite new, and it certainly was new for us getting involved in it and getting used to it and understanding what we could and couldn't do with it at the time, which is constantly changing, by the way. And so we hit upon using this template, which is another easy template to use, and introduced this and used it in a in-service example. We had an in-service for extension and had about 25 people there. We passed out laptops, or they had laptops. We passed out iPads and other tablets as well to use and set up, and then allowed them to actually develop this type of application. And they used this template, walked through an exercise, and these types of template, this is what is called a Storymap template, and allows the user to simply put things such as pictures and a geographic location on a map, and you can zoom into the map, of course, click on a point, and it links up to the photograph and has documentation that you can explain what's happening there. Very great for a touristy type of impact and that type of thing. And so we thought this would be a great introduction, and it was. Got a lot of people excited, thinking about how can I use this. It actually, I'll show you a little later, how it was used in another extension program, and we're using it for the kids. And this got us sort of started on the idea of templates, getting people involved and coming in. And we started looking at what other templates could we do and use, and how would the extension agents like to see them modified or whatever. And let me collapse this again. We'll slip out of this one. All right. So we've had people coming to us from different organizations, not just from Extension, but also from county governments and so forth, with different problems. And we usually end up going and finding out if there's a template that will do that, and how can we modify their data, and how do they have to present their data. Each one has been adding on other information. The Storymap one was a very simple idea. You put up a picture, you show its location, and you give some basic information about it. Then we had some individuals who were getting into mapping urban tree inventories and pulling that data together. So they wanted a little bit more. They didn't want to just have pictures, although this interface would allow them to pull up a picture eventually, and or PDF files and other types of things. But they wanted to be able to map it. They wanted the person to be able to change the base map in the background, all that kind of stuff. And you can do that in this kind of environment. You can pull this in, and you can flip and change base maps easily in ArcGIS Online, and it pulls in another base map. And some base maps, of course, have lots of data on them that may conflict with the information you're trying to show. So allowing a person to change their base map back and forth allows them to kind of concentrate on what they're trying to pull out of the data set. So we allowed that, and then on top of it, of course, we have the data. In GIS, data is everything. The location is one part of it, but we really need all that data behind it in order to drive all our analyses. Well, this interface allows us to pop up a simple dialog box that shows the attribute information attached to every one of those points. And we can actually look at the table that comprises all of the data in the data set as well. So they have this capability to pull this information up to see more than just a pretty picture. And in fact, you could add a link to a picture and or a link to more documentation if you were trying to, in this case, street trees. Maybe you would be trying to show what kind of diseases might be prevalent and what kind of actions you might have to take, that type of thing. So I'll just go through another one or two examples, and then talk a little bit about forest regeneration was another one we got into, and how and how we presented information in a forest, showing forest regeneration across the state, and that utilized both the photograph and the data, presented the data with pop-ups, presented photographs for that information, and then showed where in the state you could find good areas, bad areas, and that type of thing. And they were using it for training purposes. The whole idea was to be able to train people on what a good regenerating forest looked like, versus what a poor one looked like. Also got involved in food deserts. And there was an example from ESRI on an application for food deserts. And we went through and modified it. And so we can do some modifications of applications. And besides just having food deserts, we decided that when we looked at the data for food deserts, it was national data set. Well, we needed more information at the local level. So we added the ability to add data here by simply clicking on editor, grabbing something like, in this case, say a new grocery store, and then dropping it in place. And then you could fill in the information about that new location and essentially pull information in from the citizens of the state to get more localized information put on the map so we have it more updated. All right. And then finally, there was woods in our backyard. This was a project that actually threw the application together in about a day and a half, where they wanted to be able to show people their watersheds and how they related, their watershed related to other watersheds, how their impacts went downstream and influenced others. And rather than trying to do it in Google Earth, we simply created a whole new application and gave it to them. So they could just use the URL at any time. Okay, we're also using this in 4-H in an extension outreach there. Susan Hoskins is using ArcGIS Online. That involves educating the educators for the kids. Then we bring them in, we teach them how to use ArcGIS Online. We tried this, by the way, with ArcGIS. It did not go over very well. A little bit of a learning curve there. And then, so we go through the process of bringing them in and teaching them how to use ArcGIS Online, and they catch on very quickly. However, the students catch on much faster. And we have a program, we're part of the, every year we do career explorations with 4-H. The kids come to Cornell for about a day and a half, 2 days, excuse me. And they get exposed to whatever they have of interest. And we have a geospatial one that they come to, and they get to use GPS and ArcGIS Online. They get taught how to use the GPS, and they go out and collect their data, and then they get taught how to map it. And they map it, and they create these applications, as you see over here. And they've been very happy with that. And we are also introducing ArcGIS Online in the academic world a little bit in our Applied Remote Sensing and GIS for Resource Inventory Analysis class that Magdalene Alba teaches in Crop and Soil Sciences. And there, as with everybody that teaches class, you can only include just a little bit at a time as you start transitioning, and we're just using it basically as a presentation, project presentation sort of thing at the end of the class. So we haven't really incorporated all the ideas and the templates and the added tools that ArcGIS is coming out with, such as these templates, which allow you to do things like landscape analysis. They're really pushing on providing more and more services so that we can start thinking about getting off the desktop and onto a browser for doing an awful lot of our analyses and so forth. So it may be that in the future we can start to add some of these templates in to our, and actually use them in the classroom, but we'll see. And of course, there's also a new release last week, which I had to mention. ArcGIS Pro is out there. It's an integration. It allows you to run concurrently with ArcGIS Map, and it provides a great linkage to ArcGIS Online. And you see all your data, whether it's on your desktop or whether it's in ArcGIS Online, and integrate the two, and allows you to get some access to things like very quick watershed mapping, just by a drop of a point. Great. How's that? All right. Thank you.